Hi, Zizaran here with another YouTube video covering the Manifestos, and this is part 2 out of 3. This is the Manifesto covering the balance, defense, and stuff like that. So we're going to make a TLDR. If you want to see the raw reading, then we do have that uploaded as well, so make sure you check that out. But this is like a TLDR Cliff Notes type thing. So, on Evasion, dodge is removed, or dodge failed to dodge. Basically, dodge is fully gone from the game, so attack dodge specifically. Dodge being removed is probably an okay thing. So Evasion's reworked, it's easier to scale now, you can get a lot more. Not only is it easier to scale on gear, but it's also better. Basically twice as good as before. So just extremely strong. They're adding something called spell suppression. If you have 100% spell suppression, spells deal half damage to you. Now, looking at the values, it didn't look very good with the lower values. Like, if you have 20% spell suppression, you're basically getting 10% less damage taken. But I really like 100% spell suppression. Grace has seen a big rework. Grace is getting a more multiplier to evasion, and it still gets to keep its flat. So that's very strong. I was fully expecting them to remove the flat. And yeah, acrobatics is sort of not removed from the game, but acrobatics is now the only way to get spell dodge, and it converts suppression. So you can't have spell dodge and suppression. Blind is now tied to evasion, so you will no longer be running like Flesh and Stone. Well, at least not for the same purpose. Like, you won't be using Disorienting Display, Flesh and Stone just to blind the screen as before, right? It doesn't just give you free defense. This ends up being very, very strong with evasion, but not strong with other classes. And that's like the TLDR of evasion. Evasion still looks really good. All of these things, all these base types are being buffed massively. A worry here is Resolute Technique might be very strong against evasion now. And if it ends up like, if that's not looked at, Resolute Technique, which is basically you cannot miss, might end up just killing evasion build characters. Armor as well is twice as efficient and much easier to invest in. Huge buff because not only is armor itself twice as good, but we're also going to get more on base types. Determination also gets a buff. There's a Val Molten Shell rework. Val Molten Shell no longer grants 20 to 29% more armor, but it gives 5% more damage from hits taken. And it also gives more flat. And obviously, like, armor has been reworked, so it is stronger. And it would have been kind of insane if they didn't do this. Chests, we're getting something like 8 to 10% fist reduction, something like that. There are some worrying changes with armor. Brass Dome is being, well, I don't know what this means, but maybe nerfed. Memory Vault got massively nerfed. I don't know if Memory Vault will still be used. It's now 1% armor per 50 reserve mana. Formless Inferno is now 75% less, basically. It's the same as if you lost 75% fire risk, which is a pretty big deal. And like, a lot of armor items were nerfed. Transcendence is a larger penalty to all max resistances. Previously was -5. Now obviously this does get made up for a little bit by the fact that armor is getting buffed so much, but I'm surprised this touched at all, because I thought it would just be getting a very large buff to make the more interesting and more in-depth mechanics more interesting. Like I said, I'm a little bit worried that they're moving more towards a simpler game with more like, oh, attack and defense, like in Diablo 4 was initially showing, which I'm a little bit worried about. I really want niche stuff to feel more rewarding. That's what I'm worried about. I'm a little bit worried about the direction. They're also going to give us more access to maximum elemental resistance on the tree, especially in the bottom left. Energy Shield is getting very, very large buffs, and honestly, just from everything, it seems like ES is going to be, well, it's going to be blue life better than red life again. We're getting higher base ES on implicits. They're also, I think that especially affects ES more than anything, they're basically adding superior gear from Diablo 2. Now, when I first started playing Path of Exile, I thought like, oh, is this Val Regalia better than another Val Regalia? No, of course not. Every Val Regalia is the same in Path of Exile. That is no longer the case. They've basically added superior gear, and it seems that Chris Wilson's been playing Diablo 2 Resurrected. It's a joke going around. And yeah, we will now be able to find, and this isn't like something that you can bless. This will mean that you will find a Val Regalia, and it will be better than other Val Regalias. It can be up to 20%, right? I personally really like this. I think it's great. I always thought it was a really, really cool thing in Diablo, and I would like more layers of RNG and chase items, selling bases. Very big fan of this. So I actually think it's good. I've seen some people don't like it. This is obviously going to be very, very big for energy shield items. Imagine if you can find a superior shaper titanium shield. I think it's very cool. Other than that, we're also getting the removal of quality percentage. So, for example, normally, and this is kind of bad in a lot of ways, normally before 6-thinking an item, you would craft dexterity and quality, making you save up to 200-300 fusings on average, right? That is gone. That is being replaced by like, it'll be like dexterity and immunity or something like that. So that's being removed. There is higher ES regen, faster start of ES regen. So builds that are like, a while ago I had like a Dark Scorn build with like really, really fast ES recovery on an Occultist when Occultist had the like, is it Wicked Ward? I think it's Wicked Ward that does it doesn't stop when you're taking damage. And we're going to have more things like that. We're going to have more things like that coming back, and like really high recharge rate builds with shields being able to get 66% faster start of recharge. So a lot of cool things. Wicked Ward is also getting buffed. It's a lot less harsh than before, and it's going to see a lot of use. Trickster is gone. My favorite ascendancies. I'm not allowed to have favorite ascendancies anymore because Inquisitor and Trickster were my favorite ascendancies, and both of them are in the grave now. Ghost Shroud is being nerfed slightly. It doesn't have the damage reduction on it, and it is now a keystone for everybody. Very, very interesting stuff for Energy Shield overall. Occultist is obviously going to be very strong. It was a hard pick in hardcore between Trickster and Occultist, but that pick is less difficult now. And base types will then obviously have a higher variance because of the superior thing. Block. Steel Mage is on Suicide Watch, but not really. If you first read it, it seems very, very scary. Basically, the Versatile Combatants is now a keystone for everybody, and this has a pretty big nerf. It has now basically 50% max block and 50% max spell block. However, you don't need to take that, right? If you're a Necromancer, you're not going to take that. Maybe you'll take it if you're a Templar, and you actually can take it if you're a Gladiator. And it basically ends up converting your attack block to spell block at half the value, but it caps your max block at 50%. Gladiator will get a node to offset this by making your luck chance or block chance lucky. Luck chance, which means that if you have 50% block, then you would have, well, it makes your attack block lucky, so you would have 75-50 basically. However, I think somebody said if you don't take this and still manage to block cap anyway, I think you would have 96% attack block, if the math was right. But it looks really, really strong. So block still in a really good place. I initially overreacted a little bit to it until I read about the new Gladiator node. And obviously you don't have to take this for other things. You won't have to take it if you're something else. So you could just go either Glancing Blows or another block anyway. And there's also going to be loads of new mods for shields. Like, I think attack block was up to 16 or 17% block, and spell block to like 16. So shields in general are getting a lot of love. Fortify is going to be based on melee damage. They haven't like outlined it entirely how it is going to be, because they do talk about like fortification layers. And we don't fully know what's happening with Vigilant Strike. But it is going to be similar, at least in some regards, to Cruelty. We just don't know if it's going to be multiple layers or if it's going to be a 0 to 100% fortified power that gets filled up. But basically, and like they say here, they want to like take the focus away from every spellcaster wanting to run shield charge. Now, will they let Vigilant Strike stay in the game? It definitely deserves to in some ways, right? Because it's a very high skill ceiling thing. How many people can do a weapon swap, Vigilant Strike as a caster in a like feared fight or in an Uber Elder? So there's definitely arguments for and against keeping it. I think something with that is that difficult to pull off and do deserves to stay. But I think it's good that they are reworking Fortify. I was hoping to see a little bit more of another thing. I feel like something's missing from this manifesto, like some sort of like spell defense extra, like on top of what is already listed here. But either way, it'll be interesting to see what they do there. I'm a lot less happy with these, the second manifesto, than I am with the first one. The first one was great. The second one, I'm a little bit... For me, a lot of the magic of Path of Exile is I always like the really like in-depth, more clunky, weird mechanics like Transcendence, the Zoff Helmet, and things like that. And they are pulling a little bit of power back from those and putting it more into armor and defense. And I've always found like the most rewarded I've felt like as a player was when I did, for example, the Maxolotls Machination build, right? The really weird shield with like 9 keystones. Like you feel really rewarded. It's like you're playing a puzzle and you've put in pieces and you're like borderline immortal. And I never want to feel like the puzzle is too simple, right? Like Path of Exile is supposed to be an in-depth game. I never want to feel the most rewarded for just armor and evasion. I want to feel like I've figured out something, or maybe even like, not literally cheating, but you maybe feel like, oh, this is slightly too strong. I almost feel like I'm cheating. You feel really clever. That's a really good change in my opinion. I would never want Path of Exile to go back to attack and defense. I think that would be really bad. But as always, I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you think these are good changes, giving a lot more power back to armor and evasion. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.